here as always. I am always happy to have everybody here in the chat already starting up. Maddie's in the house. Hey, how you doing? Mike is in the house. How you doing, Mike? Scott, as always. Really glad. I'm really impressed. Def Leppard rocked the show last night. They got it apparently. That doesn't surprise me. Those guys can still pull it off. Hey all, yeah, good to see everybody. How you doing? Yeah, I put my glasses on tonight because, quite frankly, my peeper's retired. Yeah, Run Riot, how you doing, sir? Good to have you here. Good to be here, guys. As always, welcome Sunday at Mike's. Let me check everything here, make sure everything looks good. Yeah, I think that's a good angle. We can do that. Yeah, that works for me. Let's move this over. Yeah, there we go. It's funny. I have more of a screen view over here on my camera than I do have on my playback screen. So I'm always adjusting things. So you guys forgive that if you don't mind me getting things set up. Um, First of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be here. It is always a pleasure of me to be able to present something to you every Sunday and Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Central European Time. Time is a valuable thing, as I always start out by saying, and spending a little bit of yours with me is really always greatly appreciated. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Red, how you doing, sir? Red's in the house. Greetings, everybody. Yeah, I'm looking a little frumpy tonight, guys. Sorry. I was in my I don't want to do anything today mode, which I very rarely get. So I took advantage of it today, but I'm here. I'm 100% here with you guys. Yeah. Well, let's see. What can I start out with? Well, I usually talk about things that have been going on here at Upstairs to the Right Music, but lately, it's been quiet. It was a quiet week. And I'll take them. Actually, I used to hate them, but now I'm starting to appreciate them more. So that's a good thing. Didn't do any kind of work on guitars or anything like that at all. Actually, I just kind of worked in my garden this weekend. But I will say that tomorrow I'll be going over to Ferns, and hopefully I'll videotape some of that. Maybe we'll have another conversation with Fern. People seem to like that. Um, so I'll be going over to see him tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that, seeing my local luthier. Talk guitars, talk shop is always a good thing to do. Um, you know, I have a script for tonight, as always. Tonight's title is When Even Seymour Duncan Can't Save You. Are we at a tipping point of guitar gear? And as usual, this thought came from my musings, usually while I'm doing my gardening. And I was thinking about this Kramer guitar that came up on offer to me. And it's an 80s Kramer, so it fits in my wheelhouse. I won't buy, I try not to buy anything later than 89, 92 in a pinch. No later than 92. I guess I'm moving it up a little bit since that's considered real vintage now. 25 years old. Okay. Over 25. Um, but it had a set of original Seymour Duncans from the 80s. Now, those pickups, those Seymour Duncans from the 80s are really great sounding pickups. And the person tried to was actually kind of asking a little bit of my advice too when I said, well, that's really not my wheelhouse. And he was like, well, maybe I should really promote the fact that it has these Duncans in it. And I said, I don't know. Because when I usually take guitars to shops, they generally, it can have really nice pickups in it. And I can point those out and say, hey, you know what? These are such and such pickups, or these are, USA pickups in a Japanese guitar because of a deal they were doing at the time. And generally, the buyers don't care. They don't care. The which of course leads back to the conversation about any kind of modifications that you make to a guitar. Trust me, keep the original parts because when you take it in, if you think you're going to get more for those mods, unless you're putting a set of original 58, 59, or 60 humbuckers in it, and even then you'd ask yourself, why would you do that? And even then, you're still not going to get the value you would have if you sold those, if you just parted it out and sold it separately. um, and that kind of got me inspired to sit down and write tonight's live stream. So we're going to talk about a couple of topics tonight. I wrote them in an order, but I'm actually going to reverse the order. I'm going to go to part three first. I'm going to start at the end and work my way to the beginning tonight. Glad to have everybody here in the live stream. Shout out if you're new here. I appreciate you taking time just to even, kind of glimpse in and see what this show is all about. We talk about guitar and gear, guitar gear, anything related to music, composition, recording, songwriting, you name it. And tonight is going to be no exception at all to that rule. Let me catch up here in the chat. Mr. Watson in the house. Welcome, sir. How you doing? If I didn't say so already. Mike, what's your thoughts on Martha Reeves? Why did she drop the Vandellas? What a voice. Well, again, you have to think back at what that time period was. That was the times of the so-called Chitlin circuit, where black performers had to go around, and Motown acts were a little bit higher, a little bit up on the scale of things, but within those groups there were rivalries, just like with the Supremes. Diana Ross always going at Mary Wilson and eventually getting her kicked out. The same kind of rivalries that was going on with Martha and Vandellas. But that Chitlin circuit thing, the reason I mention is because that plays a part in it too, because doing those shows and going out there and being on a bus with those people for long periods of time, that either worked really nice or it did not work nice at all. Mr. Red says mods are for the player, not for the selling. Yes, any parts that you take off your guitar, keep them. Don't sometimes you'll take your guitar down to a luthier and he'll say, hey, do you want these parts? You say, hell yeah, I want the parts. Because all he's going to do is put it in his parts box and he's going to use it for something else. So yeah, please take your parts. Harmony EY3Z says, about to order sorry guys, my eyes are not, even with my glasses, at 59, so I figured I'd listen. Okay. Yeah, welcome by the way to the chat, sir. Welcome to this live stream. It's so good to have you here, Harmony. Good to have you here. Tired of the noise on the single. Yeah, of course you can put shielding down in your cavity, I was watching. I watch a lot of concerts on YouTube, and it's interesting. I watch them for totally different reasons than other people. Like, for example, if you watch one of my recent shorts on me going to that rap concert with Redman, if you notice, I'm intensely watching the stage. What I'm looking at is I'm watching how he does his set. And how, and how do you arrange a rap, concert? So that's what I was looking at. I found that was more interesting than the music and, itself. Performance is great. But when I lock in on live stream, I'm sorry, when I lock in on YouTube and concert videos, I'm really looking at what the players are playing. And I notice a lot of guys use noiseless pickups on their Strats and their Tellies. So I know Prince eventually, before he died, moved to noiseless pickups. That might be an alternative if you don't want to go to humbuckers. Sorry for the long answer there. Pre-order Helix Stadium. Nice. I think you're going to get yourself a nice little rig there going. Mike says, I bought a couple of guitars with Seymour Duncan. Pickup set factory installed. One Yamaha. Yep. And they're nice. And if they're the older ones, it's just like it's just like all those pickups. The older ones actually they actually do have a little bit of mojo to them. And you can pick your reason why that is. But having played and heard and experienced most of 70s and 80s pickups, I can tell you that that's true. Mr. Crando, welcome, sir. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you here this evening. You're always welcome. I think you're right that the real Mojo instruments and gear cutoff was like 80, but for me, I'll take it into early 2000s. Fair enough. But then it nosedives right around 2004 into chaos. I have to agree with it. It's not just that, but in my case, Alan, it's also an issue of of my business too. I have found that if I stray into the 2000s, my profit margins nosebleed. They just nosedive, and there's reasons for that. Not to say that there aren't fine guitars that were made from the last 25 years, but not for me. I'm not trying to spam, but I had a Facebook Marketplace find. No, Harmony, this is what we're here to talk guitars and gears. If you're talking guitars, you're not spamming. Believe me, we have had real spammers. That's why my good friend Maddie and Scott are here to help me out with that. So you're good. LT guitar, speaker, yeah, for 700 bucks. That's the thing too, guys, is that you're starting to see that snowball effect that I've been talking about for 2 years now. And God bless them, three chord Dave has been talking about, I'll concede even longer than that, uh, about this eventual sell off that was going to happen. So there's deals to be had if you have the cash to get them. But yeah, nice haul. So I'm going to start with actually talking about a subject. Actually, I'm gonna go two, one, and then three. That's gonna be my segment order tonight. So let's go to segment two. Why don't these sell? Vintage gear market real talk. Um, yeah, when even Seymour Duncan can't save you, there's a tipping point there because they don't care at a certain date, or they don't care like a collector would care. And if you view the market like that, if you have that kind of cutthroat kind of viewpoint of it, you'll do much better, even in your own personal deals, private deals, when you're not doing it for business, but you're just doing it on your own. If you take the viewpoint that, this is not really going to make a difference to most folks, only a small amount of people, and that's going to take time to find that someone. You find that one person, that needle in the haystack, that'll give a crap that those are 70s DiMargios. But, that's going to take a minute. Whereas, there's other aspects of it that would sell it a lot quicker. Flash Flood of Gear had a video on YouTube recently, and they were asking the question why their gear isn't selling. And they brought up a vintage Epiphone, a Fender USA, a Fender Japan, a Taylor acoustic, and a Seymour Duncan bass. For those of you who did not know, that Seymour Duncan at one point did try to move into the realm of instrument building, and the Seymour Duncan basses are actually great basses. In terms of, you got to imagine that they focus in on the sound of it. But people aren't buying them, and they're like, "Gee, why is this happening?" Um, Seemingly unsellable despite being good gear, and why is that? And I kind of chuckled a little bit, not really at their expense, but just at the ridiculousness of this. Sometimes this guitar gear market, and how fickle things are, and also how cyclical things are. We rode away from around the 2015s, 2014, 2015, and then COVID just rocketed it to the moon, and now we are on the downside of that, and so even guitars that in the past would have raised a lot of attention. People are saying, well, there's other things that I need to focus on right now other than that. And therefore, that's not something that's a priority. That's number one. That's the first thing I kind of chuckled about. Is like, well, read the room. I kind of said to my screen while I was watching that video. Also, I noticed just a little critique. And the guys over at Flash Flooded Gear, go over to their channel and check them out if you haven't. They're good guys, but one thing I noticed that they don't have any direct links to their items. If I'm thinking about pondering and just testing the waters of seeing like, okay, maybe I'll take this guitar and I'll put it up here on this channel and see what interest I get in it. But in order to do that, there has to be a direct link for somebody to be able to buy that guitar. And one thing I noticed with them is they just say, hey, check out our website and look at our other guitars. Well, somebody might not want to do that. Somebody might want to just directly go to that guitar, that link directly to that one that you're featuring in your video and buy it. So there was that. It's called, you get a little friction in buying is what they call it. You want to get that friction and something like that. And only general site links, will create that friction. And not in a positive way. There's positive and negative to that statement. And also, one thing I noticed that gets brought up here on this channel a lot are about the prices of some of this vintage gear, some of these guitars, especially the made in Japan, how they're creeping up. Well, they're not creeping up really any more than the price of inflation. However, because it is still a word of mouth market, especially Facebook Marketplace was just mentioned here. The forums are another place. There are certain guitars that if you get them, like if you can get yourself a Greco 1200 and put it up for sale in all original condition, and the case would even be better, then you got yourself some gold there. And you can ask a pretty reasonable price for that. The rest of this stuff, a lot of these guys need to lower their prices, and they will. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing 10 to 12 to 11, 10, 12, 11% discounts. It'll get steeper. So those were my two critiques to answer their question directly why they weren't selling. Just some things that I would do if I were them. They have a huge store and a big shop, and they've got over $100,000 worth of inventory. And so they need to really fight that friction. The bigger issue, however, that got me thinking about tonight's script in general, about what to talk about, is the fact that something that I've been talking about for a long time, you guys know it, is that there's millions of freaking guitars for sale out there. If they stop producing, if every guitar manufacturer in the world stopped producing guitars today, there would still be more than enough of the new stock to go around, and not to even mention the secondhand stock. Hell, even the third-hand stuff. A reissued jazz bass isn't really rare or special really anymore because they've reissued it 20,000 times. That's another fact of it. You can only milk that reissue cow so many times. Just like you can only milk that limited edition. People are getting wise to that statement as well, but we've talked about these things. In the chat, let me catch up. Did you hear that a legend had died? Yeah, we're going to talk about that tonight. We're actually going to talk about that tonight. That's actually my number one, but I want to talk about this first. Selling anything is hard work. Yeah, I hate it. I hate doing sales. I'm being frank with you guys. I love these guitars, but when it comes time to have to negotiate a price and deal, I hate it. Every time, every month. It's an amazing thing that I don't have ulcers. But, it's just, that's called work. It's not called Happy Fun Camp. And even though it was washing machines or skateboards, it would be the same thing, So, but I agree with you, Scott. Mike, I saw that video on Flash Flooded Gear. He's a big fan of the made in Japan guitars as well as vintage guitars. He's shown some pretty. He's got some nice stuff. But I wonder if maybe the prices are too high. Yeah, that's really what I was kind of alluding to there. I was trying to skate around and be nice. So I'm glad that you said it, not me. Just kidding, Mike. Yeah, the prices. You know, you may have had the right idea, but in the wrong part of the cycle. It's just like surfing. You guys ever surf out there? I actually love surfing. I got introduced to surfing in college, believe it or not, by one of my fraternity brothers. And one of the things about surfing is catching that wave at the right moment. If you don't, if you're a little bit ahead or a little bit behind, it's not going to work. But if you catch it right in the sweet spot, you can ride it all the way. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Japanese and V's and Explorers seem to be going for stupid money right now. I don't know, Michael. I had that, as you know, I had that Flying V in. Um, I guess it really depends upon the maker. That was an Epiphone, so that's true. And that was a Korean Epiphone too. So yeah, maybe so. I have to look into that, but it soured me on them. It soured me on them because I broke even. That's one of those break even things. And I don't, I, you know, you're not going to be in business long if you're just breaking even. So I kind of started shying away from those actually. You're speaking the truth, Mike, as always. No, I'm 58 years old and I've had a little bit of experience in it. I'm just merely trying to save you guys from making, a man can teach you two things. A man can teach you two things. He can teach you what to do and what not to do. And so I hope to be in the category of what to do. I really do. I honestly do. And not just in this, but in every aspect of my life. Fresh flood, buy a big, but I'm not sure about selling through them. Yeah, they have the great idea. They got the money, they got the loan, or they got the funds in order to invest. Now the question is, will they be able to ride out the cycle to where it starts picking up again? And they can really start moving that stuff. And I wonder. I keep it small and tight, and even if the small numbers, the 4 or 5 a month that I deal in, um, to be honest with you, I want to expand more, but there's a lot of hesitancy out there, and it's just the truth of the matter. It's just the truth of it. So with that in mind, I paid $200 for an original '76 jazz bass. Vintage no longer means premium if supply outweighs demand. So those days are coming. I'm exaggerating there when I say $200 for a '76 jazz bass because that's not going to happen. But I'm just saying that when you have a situation where supply outweighs demand, then you're going to naturally see a ratcheting down of prices. That's just basic economics. That's high school economics. So and it plays out. Um, Epiphones devalued by Gibson and overpriced by age alone, um, in my opinion. And vice versa. I think somehow, in some ways, that Gibson was devalued by Epiphone as well. I did that short comparing, it's right here behind me, 1992 Rock Spirits, and I showed you guys it. And I talked about the fact that you've got a one piece. I couldn't believe it. I looked at that thing and I said, I couldn't believe it when I looked at the back. And it's a one piece mahogany back on it, just like you would find on your standard USA Gibson. It's got a maple cap, nice thick maple cap, and a nice AAA veneer on it. But the posts go directly into the wood, again, like you would find on a high quality Gibson from the custom shop, because they don't even do that with their standards, and nor do Epiphone as well. And the question was, which would you rather have? And Gibson devalues itself in a lot of ways, because that line between the point of that is the line between a Gibson and an Epiphone is getting narrower and narrower, where the prices are getting closer and closer. Value needs to be for the player, not just for the collector as well in a saturated market. Collectors are going to collect, as they say. And, the value really needs to be for the players out there. You know, I love these guitars to death, but again, at the end of the day, the ones that I end up using are the ones that are not exactly the most expensive ones, but they punch ahead above of their value, and there is what a player is looking for, and that gap is getting a lot narrower, unfortunately, when it comes to Epiphone and Gibsons, because that value just is starting to go out the door. So, good gear isn't enough in a market with too many options and too many overpriced meh pieces. Good gear isn't enough in a market with too many options. Is the main takeaway from that statement. It's not. It's not enough. It's got to be special. It's got to have a mojo to it. It's got to have a story to it. It's got to have a lot of things that most of the guitars out there don't have. And so nostalgia pricing isn't going to work when people can get a used great playing Epiphone Les Paul Special for £100, I saw the other day looking at British sites. I've had, it's a decent guitar and it'll get you where you need to go. I think that I've sold the guitars that I have sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But I always try to keep a realistic price in mind. And the key point here is that the emotional value of a guitar does not translate to market value in this part of the cycle, at this stage of the cycle. So you have to start thinking differently. You have to start approaching it differently as a buyer and a seller. So there's that. There's that. Just my thoughts on it. Mike, on paper, it was a no-brainer, but why did Fender fail so badly on the Hello Kitty launch? Yeah, I remember that. Again, who wants an overpriced Hello Kitty Fender guitar? Who's going to really seriously rock that other than a joke? Like you go to well, not anymore, but you go to a Foo Fighters concert and Dave Grohl comes out with one of those just as to get a laugh from the audience. It's not really, because I'm not gonna, rock it. If I pulled that out and said, "Hey guys, this is my main guitar," people would be like, "Yeah, not sure about Mike." And even for a female audience who don't want to, be the reincarnate of Josie and the Pussycats, they want a more, serious, aggressive guitar. They're flexible maybe on the colors a little bit more, but that wasn't it. That's my 2 cents on that. What was, Maddie says, what the market is now facing is there are just too many guitars in existence and they keep making more. That basically sums it up, Maddie. We're in a situation where the guitar manufacturers are in an existential crisis. They know that they're overproducing more than the market needs, but they can't stop producing, or they're done. They're done. Run Riot asking a question, Scott. I will move on then. Mike says Epiphones is a good deal used if you want a Gibson type guitar but yeah, again, then you start getting into the second-hand market. And anything that Epiphone comes out with, really is going to get ignored until it moves into the secondary market. And that's just not, that's it. It was hyped for literally 3 minutes, but Fender went all in. Yeah, I don't know. You know, the crack is must be really strong in some of these boardrooms. That's the only conclusion that ultimately that I can come to. Not for me. Yeah, yeah. Me, I have both runs of it, and they're pretty decent, minus the pickups low. Oh, do you run right? Interesting. Well, for again, the collectors are going to collect, and I completely. That's another aspect. There's only so many collectors. There's some people are going to collect those, and will they fetch something in the future? Yeah, 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 yeah. They'll have a notoriety to them that may down the line that other collectors will want to buy, but it's a collector's market kind of thing. So that's a good point. So when I was a kid, um, my mother and father took me to my first concert. It was at the Greek Theater, which in Los Angeles is located just below the Griffith Park Observatory. And a lot of sage around there. The smell of sage in the summertime is very strong in the air. The air was very warm, and I remember as a young boy, maybe I was 6 years old. See, about 6 years old, 6 or 7. And my parents went to take me to see Chuck Mangione. And um, I'd like to talk about Chuck Mangione tonight because he passed away. Born in 1940, um, passed away this week. And he was a flugelhornist, a composer, and a big influence. People look at a lot of guys and they would never figure. They'd say, "Oh, this guy, really? This guy, this kid from L.A., this scruffy kid from L.A." Chuck Mangione was a big influence on him. Yes, yeah. I learned bass lines from him, and I learned orchestration at an early age. My parents bought the Land of Make Believe album, and they put it on heavy rotation, and I can sing every lyric to every song on that. If you guys really want to hear the song that gets it for me off that album, that really defines what I mean about bass lines and orchestration, listen to the track As Long As We're Together. As Long As We're Together off the Chuck Mangione 1973 Land of Make Believe album. Listen to that track. You find it on YouTube. And imagine a 6 or 7 year old me listening to that, and my father in our living room, and sitting in front of the fireplace. And I know it sounds la di da. It was. I'm not even going to pretend that I didn't have a little silver spoon in my mouth on a good growing up, with my father's good stereo system, and and it's really worth listening to. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. Yeah, man, dig it. Listen, as long as we're together, listen to that Scott was kind enough to put up, guys. If you want to listen to a beautiful voice, just a beautiful song, and the message of that song also. The lyrics of that song, when I'm feeling down, I often think as long as we're together, we'll always have daylight ahead. I love that. I love that. That's since I was 6 or 7. That's been something that's been bouncing around in my head, inspiring me. Um, you know, Orchestration and melodic bass lines are something that are often overlooked in rock production. And if you listen to my tracks that I do, you'll notice that the bass line or bass lines, because sometimes I'll play two, maybe in the case of some songs, three bass parts. I learned that from Prince. Not for the reasons that he did it, because he didn't want anybody playing his stuff live. In my case, it's because just I actually learned from Stevie Wonder that you can mix different melodic bass lines. If you do it right, then it sounds like one and it's kind of groovy. Ain't No Way, my track Ain't No Way is a good example of that between the bass and the clavinet parts that I did. But I learned that really also going all the way back to Chuck Mangione as well in just understanding orchestration, just getting started down that pathway. It was a unique blend of jazz, classical, and pop. And as a songwriter, as a melody, everything, I'd have to say that that was in my top three albums. Um, I'd like you to just take a moment to listen to that. Show a little respect to Chuck. I know he didn't get the big, universal send off that Ozzy did. That may tell you something because Chuck Mangione's It Feels So Good. Everybody knows Feels So Good. You guys all know that. That came later, about 3 or 4 or 5 years later. 77 Feels So Good came out. But everybody knows that song. But just take a moment and listen to that track, you know. Ain't No Way. Yeah, there you go. Man, my man. Scott, thank you. Yeah, and that track Ain't No Way, you'll hear, if you really put on a pair of headphones and listen to that, you'll hear that I'm playing three parts to the clavinet and on top of two parts in the bass line. And that song is super busy. But yeah. So take a minute and just listen to that track and appreciate Chuck and what he brought to us. Here's a man who did not go out of the world with the title Prince of Darkness. A slight there, but you'll grant me that. But here's a man who went out as a family man, loved his family. He was an Italian man. He loved his family, as Italians tend to, and just a beautiful person. And we're gonna miss him. That was alive. Here's the album version. Ain't No Way. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the live version. Yeah, that was with Asanoki. And no, we couldn't, my keyboard player, I said, I told him, just pick, the clap parts that you like and play that. You don't have to play all the parts. Um, yeah, dig that. Okay, now we can move to segment three. Where are we at here? Yeah, we're doing good on time. We're doing good on time. Thank you, Scott, by the way. Thank you. My mom was a huge fan of Chuck. It was on stereo every weekend. Great 70s music memory. Rest in peace, Chuck. Yeah, my mom too, man. See, we all have something in common somewhere. No matter where we come at from the world, we all got it. Music, good music, used to bring us together, man. Music used to bring people together. I'll say it again, like Dr. Umar. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. It's a controversy that's going on. Another segment of the YouTube cafeteria, but music used to bring people together worldwide. When an album came out, it was a worldwide thing, and everybody, no matter where you were from Tokyo to Lisbon, was to LA, was buying a copy. And that doesn't exist anymore. They killed that. The music industry, and we're going to say that's a great segue because we're going to segue into my discussions about Dave Marsh's book, Strange Tales from the Canyon. But we're going to take a little, again, building off what we've talked about from there. I want to go another direction too and bring in the specter of AI into this discussion. And you're going to say, oh, wow, Mike, how are you going to tie in the Laurel Canyon thing into AI? Again, insights into my brain. I'm out there in the garden and I'm sitting there playing fetch with my dog because my deck is 30 feet. So I can throw the ball all the way down the deck. The dog runs down, fetches the ball, brings it back down. I'm just sitting there playing fetch with her to keep her busy. And I made this connection, so I want to share with you guys tonight. See what you think. Scotty says transcends barriers, countries, nationalities, everything. Good music. Good music does. And it used to be that way. And the record companies have really just, in my opinion, gone out of their way to do things to kill that. And the reason that they go about doing things to kill that is because they never, ever, ever, ever did and never will, with very few exceptions, ever view the music as anything other than product. And when you view something just as product, as I was talking about with guitars earlier, and taking a very cold, it's a product only view to it, when you apply that to people and an art form like music, that has occurred, and I'm going to show you how it's been occurring for a lot longer than people are. I'm going to give you a view on AI music that I guarantee you that nobody else on YouTube at our little table. Remember, YouTube's a cafeteria at lunchtime, and we've got the YouTube guitarist table, guitar gear table. You got Rick Beato, you got all these other people sitting at this table. I bet you nobody sitting at this table has brought this up. This one take. So we're, excuse me, guys. So we're seeing AI generated bands popping up on YouTube. Some have avatars. Speaking of Rick Beato, he created a fake band with an avatar. Some have voices that don't exist. It's weird. And it has had its effects on things. But I question whether or not it's new. See, I don't think it's new. I don't think this is a new thing. I don't think that this is a new thing that the music business is doing, especially with Spotify, by bringing in these AI artists that now that's what they're going to feature because it's their own in-house AI artists. And they basically control the money that they're generating that you're paying for that. That's it's a great business model. I was inspired by this thought because here in Amsterdam, a gym that people that I know were going to as of Friday. They're not anymore. On Friday, it was revealed that that gym had been involved in human trafficking with their cleaners. They were bringing folks over from the Philippines here to allegedly here to Holland and taking their passports and not paying them checks and making them work 17 hours a day cleaning this health particular branches of this particular gym. And as soon as that news broke, all the influencers and all the people that this gym had employed all ran like these like roaches when you open the refrigerator and like those old videos where they open the refrigerator and the roaches scatter everywhere. Well, yeah, it was like that. They all scattered. And I said, wow, that's crazy, man, how fast they fled and everybody's quit. They're done. But that's a separate story. But the point is that AI, influencers were the bread and backbone that helped make this gym what it was. And once they fled, you saw the collapse literally over from Friday till now. That gym, everybody I know has quit. I worked out there. I used to go down there to do yoga. I won't be going there anymore, obviously. The instructors that I know down there from the yoga class have quit. Everybody's, jumping ship. But somebody pointed out to me that there are AI influencers who are not human beings. And there's a management company in Japan that created their own AI influencers and they manage them. So not only do the human influencers have management, who, by the way, were writing the quick, script to get out there to the internets. Hey, my client is no longer involved with this gym. But you have AI influencers who do the same thing through their management companies. It's insane. It's insane. It's insane. I bring that up and set this preface up for you guys just to show you how insane things are, and also how things can flip on a dime for you as well. Now, how does this tie into Dave McGowan's Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon book? Well, if you remember, we were talking about the Doors, and he made a pretty shocking claim that the Doors, and remember their producer, Peter Rothschild, Peter Rothschild, their producer. Yeah, he was a real Rothschild, by the way. If you guys haven't checked that out, go back a couple live streams and check that out. Said that Kruger, Ray Mazak, none of those guys could play. They couldn't play in time. They couldn't they were all over the place. So this begs the question, who made the music that you hear on those Doors albums? Because their producer said it wasn't them. It wasn't the band, the Doors. It was, of course, Morrison singing. But again, when it hit the live stage, it got dicey then too, because most of the times he was drunk. So find me a, and if you look at them on TV, there's usually a backing track that's being. I checked it out. I saw them on the Dick Cavett show just to check it out, and sure enough, they're up there playing. Maybe along, but there is a backing track to that, also for the vocal as well, which is pretty standard for TV at that time, but still. And I started thinking, well, maybe the Doors were kind of, in a way, the original AI band. It wasn't them that was doing the music. It was some other, probably the Wrecking Crew, which I hate to use that term because I know that Carol Kane hates that term and I respect her deeply. So scratch that. But I have to use it so that we can keep the conversation going here, so you guys know who I'm talking about. Most likely, 99% sure that it was those folks that did that record with Jim Morrison on the vocal. But if you take that, but again, that's but it was put out that it was a band, is the point of that. And that is no different than creating an AI band and putting out saying it's a band. Yeah, you'll have to get some human beings who can eventually or play the music, but then again, that gets into looks, ability to play, all those things that, seem to matter. Video killed the radio star, if you dig that. But, it's no different. So that means that, because again, the record company was looking at the Doors for a lot of, we're not going to get into the weird stuff, but just on a basic business level, they were looking at the Doors as product. So they created the product and then, said, okay, guys, go out and do this, play this, sing this. Despite their counterculture fame, the Doors relied on studio musicians. And like I said, Jim was too out of it most days to even perform live. So if the band didn't actually play the music on the record, are they still a real band? Or are they a 1960 version of an AI group, manufactured, packaged, and sold as authentic? I just want you guys to chew on that. There's nothing new under the sun. And depending upon the technology that's available, they're just going to try to do the same things using the new technology. Well, we used to create bands back, in the day, Milli Vanilli being a more modern example that we all are aware of. You know, if we were doing that back when, when things weren't digital and there was no AI, then with this new AI thing, that just makes it a little bit easier. Again, getting back to why I was talking about Spotify and their in-house AI artists that they manage. That, they create the music that they manage and they get fees on both publishing, royalty and all that. They keep the money. And eventually, all you guys are going to be doing is listening to AI bands. I'm laughing, but it's a nightmare. but but again, it's nothing. You may have been listening to AI bands, quote unquote, really for decades. For decades. Nothing is new under the sun. Nothing. Isn't that what it says in Ecclesiastics? Nothing is new under the sun. That's what King Solomon wrote. I'm just saying that it's something to think about. I don't think I've heard anybody make that connection. And really, a lot of people have been asking me what I think about it. I said, well, other than the fact that it completely destroyed the best gig that I ever had writing TV commercials, let me tell you, that's a sweet gig. Because the companies that they're using AI writers now, and the scale dropped to nothing. So it's not even worth doing to pennies. Just like the beat guys, now they're suffering because boy, the AI beats are better. But nothing is new under the sun. Let me catch up here in the chat. Music has been bad ever since they stopped doing the Pepsi challenge. I love living on an island, no cockroaches or snakes. That's nice, Scott. Mr. Stevens, welcome. How are you doing? Welcome to the chat. Ding dong, I know you can hear me. Open the door. I only want to play a little ding dong. It's already too late to try and run away. Lewis, I don't like that, man. That's like, do you want to play a game? if we're doing that tonight, that's not good. That's not good at all. So try to rephrase that. I've seen the future and it will be. I've seen the future and it works. Isn't that what the Joker said in Batman? Well, that's actually Prince. Um, would any of the Wrecking Crews would any of the Wrecking Crew session men, Mike says, and finish. Okay, we'll move on to that. Run Riot. I always thought the Wrecking Crew was a badass name, though I guess I can understand why Carol Kane dislikes it. If I were in her position, though, I wear it as a badge of honor. Well, as a female, she can't wear it as a badge of honor because back then a Wrecking Crew was a bunch of guys who went and, wrecked some chicks, joint, uh, crotch area. So no, it's not a badge of honor that she's ever because she doesn't like. That's the reason why she doesn't like that term. It's not a positive wrecking and crew. It's not a positive denotation to it. Old school AI impression players. Yeah, let's bring out our old PCs and see what they can come out. Maybe they can come out with some old school songs. All correct, Mike. Uncredited session players, the norm, not the exception. Run Riot, laughing out loud, but crying on the inside, right? Yep. So what's old is new. Um, it's just nothing. Nothing is new under the sun. Is the conclusion of that? And honestly, you know, they're as long as they look at music as product, which they do, their goal is to produce that product for as cheaply and easily as possible with a maximal, profit that they can make on that. That's understandable. However, you have that clashing of the musician and the artistic vision that this is a value versus the corporate structure that says it's product and it's going to be whatever value we determine it to be. And believe me, your cut of that is going to be very low. So if a band didn't actually play the music on the record, are they still a band, a real band? And are they just really, is that just really the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s version of, I guess we can stop mid 2000 now because we have AI, of what was going on before, or what's happening now. We got AI bands with fake personas, deep fake vocals, and music written and lyrics written by algorithm. They don't mess up, they don't need sleep, and just like the Doors, maybe, if you put your computer in front of a guitar, it's not going to exactly play it too great. Apparently, like, the Doors, until they got better. They got better, you know, I guess. I don't know. At least the Doors existed physically, though. Again, and the record companies had to put up with, oh, Jim's drunk again, or oh, he did, or Janice doesn't want to come in the studio, or these guys are fighting us over this contract and they're not going to record their next album until they see, all that's gone. See, AI is just cutting out that aspect of the heartache that they didn't want to deal with, right? They toured, they bled, they passed out, but they were real. Now we're starting to go into the age of the true illusion of a band. Now, again, with the Doors, it was a great sounding record. At least we got that out of it on our end as a consumer. Our end of that bargain was you had great musicians with great songs, with great arrangements, sung by a guy who never sang before, but he actually turned out to have a great voice. Go figure. So it worked out. Now it's crappy vans, crappy vocals, crappy music that is no longer transcending barriers. It's very sectionalized, It's not, Some rap has a worldwide appeal, but even that's starting to slide off. Um, there was a time, I don't like to mention it, but but as long as we're being truthful here, there's a time when Nicki Minaj's Anaconda, for example, that was something that everybody everywhere was talking about, but they weren't talking about the song, they were talking about her fat ass. And to be honest with you, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show because, I don't remember, speaking of Martha and the Vandellas, I don't remember them coming out, shaking their ass, you know, in a G string. Maybe it's because they actually had real talent. I don't know. Up to you to decide. But this kind of ties into my I'm good philosophy, believe it or not. See, I can even tie this into that. You know, I'm good because AI didn't kill the music. Really, labels did. And I never, I try to work around, or I learned my lesson working for Babyface about working for labels because you will work your ass off and that check may or may not be coming. And then that's just the truth of it. When I went independent and started picking up these solo gigs, they paid cash up front. When I went to go mix Levert's album, Lock and Key, for example, when I went to go mix that album, some tracks on that album, they paid me, they had an envelope full of cash ready for me. Didn't have to wait for a check. Same thing in Japan, when I was working for Sony and NHK. Same, labels killed it. And AI is just a new tool for making something that the suits can sell without having to pay anybody but themselves. And maybe a computer tech, maybe. Which, you know, I'm sure that guy is not exactly rolling in the dough either. AI didn't kill music, guys. It was the music labels. Don't get it twisted. Don't say, oh, AI killed music. Oh, AI. You see this on YouTube. All these YouTube titles. AI killed the music. AI killed my this. That. No, 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 no. Don't get it twisted. It was the labels who created this environment and killed music. Okay? It wasn't AI. That's just, par for the course. That's the latest technology that they can use in order to squeeze you out even further. And you would say to yourself, well, how much abuse can consumers take? Apparently, a great deal. I don't really, I know the sales figures are nowhere that they were back when I was really into it in the 90s and the early 2000s, because that was the golden age, and nobody's selling records like that anymore, regardless of the platform, and regardless of whether you're a real band or not. However, you know, it's just indicative of a sliding down, a further deterioration of the music business. And it is the labels that are creating this environment. So my answer is the Doors had LSD in the Wrecking Crew. AI bands have Chat GPT and way too much RAM. Either way, someone else is playing the tune. That's just the fact of it. In other words, it's nothing new. That's my reply to this whole AI is killing music thing. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. Again, if you think that that it is, I reference you to Milli Vanilli, which is the best example, that I can give you that everybody can go, oh yeah, huh? Oh yeah, huh? Huh? Right? Yeah? Catch up here in the chat. Capitalism wins again. It's funny, though people think the Laurel Canyon scene was so authentic, couldn't be more opposite. Yeah, it's manufactured again, using the technology of the time. Capitalism for the win again. Yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll replaced by porn, fentanyl, and AI. Yeah, yeah. It's all masturbatory, isn't it? It's all self. There's no external to any of that, if we really did dig through that. AI automatic greed, in my opinion, but like Frank Zappa said, that was my last line. Mike. Frank Zappa said, in the 70s, recording company execs snorting detergent and screwing each other all day. Yeah. But it was Frank Zappa said eventually they're going to bring up, the scenery, and you're going to see the real brick wall behind the scenery, and you're going to really know the truth of it. Ben, hey, do you think it's possible Ozzy passed before that last show and wasn't even Ozzy? Yeah, I looked at some of the clips of that with Jack Black introducing them, and I watched some of those clips. Yeah, that's Ozzy. Which I'm not going to get into conspiracies about Ozzy, because let's be honest. Let's be honest. Let's just be honest. Ozzy, the fact that he made it as long as he did, tell me anybody out there who's not surprised. Okay? Because I'm completely surprised. You remember that time he got the glass in his throat? Remember the time that he flipped his ATV over on himself and completely broke every bone in his body, and he was not a spring chicken? That was in the early 2000s. Not to mention the copious amounts of alcohol and drugs and all the other things that he's done. That man had lived a charmed life. So yeah, that was Ozzy on stage. The reason that it rings true to me is I read, and you don't hear this, I read someone who mentioned the fact that they had started their retirement. That was it. And then he was going to go into his retirement and he died. And that rang true to me. That really rang true to me. So no need to do conspiracy on all these, because I mean, at 84, where are you going to go from there? If he was, a younger man, Like Epstein. Ooh, sorry, shouldn't have said that. I love Zappa. Mike says, yep. The surviving member of Milli Vanilli seems to have learned how to sing in the years since they got outed. I'll give him props for that. Ray Manzarek learned how to play the Doors songs eventually. I'll give him that. But doesn't it negate the fact? I'm just saying. Ben, he made it way further than anybody would have guessed for sure. I'm just saying, you know. Talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Keith Richard had surgery so that his hand is permanently like this because the arthritis got so bad, he had to get it so that if you look at Keith Richard, his hand is always like this. I'm not kidding. Look that up. That's the that's going into a whole other thing. But yeah, he outlived us all, I guess. He used to snort lines of live ants. I never heard that one, but again, whatever makes your day, whatever floats your boat. I just want you guys to think about that. I mean, if we're really seriously going to be thinking people, and everybody says us musicians are stupid, I say to them, there's one guy, a Japanese guy. I was in a party that I was invited to, a bunch of suits. They were all trading house guys, and this guy came from a very well-off Japanese family, and he was as dumb as rocks. Didn't know anything about derivative markets when I got into that with him, but he could so easily, what I gave him, an understanding of a particular gold at that time. He said to me in a very condescending way, "You're very smart for a musician." And my reply back to him was, "I don't think that Mozart could be considered anything less than a genius. There are some smart musicians out there. You know, there are actually some smart guys." And so, if we're really going to be considered to be smart guys, have a little bit of brains with us, we have to look at these things objectively. And sometimes we have to avoid the woe is me. Because the whole AI thing discussion at our table has been on, they took our jobs, when really, how is this any different than how they took your job, back in the studio days? In the ways that they were able to do at that time with the technology that they had available. A lot of people in the 50s to make, a lot of people in the 60s to make a record. Try to scale that down to fewer people in the 70s, bands who do their own recording. They're all self-contained like the Eagles. So, we don't need to hire a record crew to do that. They can do it themselves under a contract that we control. 80s get into keyboards and synthesizers, so the guys like Prince, who could really play everything anyway, but it made it easier for guys like that, Thomas Dolby, for guys like that to produce their own records. Smaller amount of people there need produce them, smaller amount. You understand? It gets smaller, smaller, and smaller as you go along. And eventually, you're going to be in one of those groups that are in the cutting zone, eventually over time, to where music companies are nothing but suits and computers. But this is, again, nothing new. Nothing new. I have fire ants. Hard to believe that one, though. Interesting, Ben. Yeah, I'm old enough from the 70s. Have you ever heard some of the Richard Gere ones from the 70s? How about the David Bowie ones from the 70s? How about, never mind. So I don't know. Some of those ones are pretty outrageous. I won't repeat them here for fear of slander, but yeah. Uh, I mean, we may not all be stupid, Run Riot says, but there are a lot of stupid musicians, in my opinion. Honest opinion. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that, because because if if they had a respect for musicians that they really should have, then it wouldn't attract the stupid ones who think that they can somehow find a place there. But there are some stupid talented people too. So I don't know. We might be poor, but we're not stupid. Yeah. Nosotros somos pobre. We are all poor. We are poor, but we're not stupid. It's just a way of thinking and looking at things is what I try to do here with these live streams. Guys, to look at, I read you from Dave McGowan, and then I try to tie it into other things because I want to show you, in this example tonight, for example, that nothing is new. We can't all be Brian May or Tom Schultz. Yeah. I am no different. I'm that guy. The one who you could lock me into a studio and I could come out with an album in 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks, a week if pressed, but give me 2 weeks and I can produce an album by myself. But again, I realize that's cutting out a lot of people. That's cutting out a bassist, a drummer. They need to feed their families. A keyboard player, they need the engineer. You know, I'm part of that problem too because I thought it was cool, but I realize now that I was just part of that. I was just funneling things in, and I'm not. I think as an independent now, it benefits me, but there's just that. Home studios killed a lot of work again. That's part of the funneling too. Then the technology turned so that we no longer have to go to the big studios. So that gatekeeper is gone. So the studios who had a lot of control and a lot of power and a lot of say, their power got cut out of the equation. It's gangster shit, man. It's gangster level shit. And they're out. Okay? I would say jazz players are very smart. The dumb do not play jazz. Yeah, I've never met a stupid jazz musician. Good point. Good point. Slander, slander, slander. It's hearsay, sir. You guys are gonna laugh at me, but I always watch a Saturday night movie. That's my treat to myself. Pick a movie. And I watched the movie last night that you guys are, it was partly because the person that I was watching it with, that you wouldn't believe. I watched Legally Blonde with Reese Witherspoon. You're like, Mike, we've respected you before, but we've lost all respect for you. But that's slander, slander, slander. It reminds me of that movie. That was the first time I saw it. Because when that movie came out, I was knee deep in Japan. And I was either at that period of time, early 2000s. So yeah, I had switched over and over out of music completely. I was in my working in Japan, and I never saw that movie until last night. And I have to be honest with you, I kind of liked it. It had that. It made me. It made me long for those days, for that carefree American Pie kind of groove that we had back in the 90s. Nostalgia can be dangerous though, because we all know that things have taken a turn. I think we can all feel that for sure. And we all look back and say, oh, we wish it was back, but it's not. But I can watch a movie like that and at least get that feeling again. So that's good enough. She must have been hot. Yes, she was. Yeah, yeah, she is. Yeah, she is. I didn't mind it, it was a groovy movie. I was like, all right, we'll watch that one, But I didn't mind it. I actually liked it, like I said, because it took me back. It took me back to a good time. So anything that take you back to a good time is a good thing. But we can't get too much of that because nowadays, unfortunately, guys, we have to raise above our mental capacities. We're going to have to look at things a little bit different. We're going to look at a little bit deeper, and we're going to have to avoid the general consensus and try to, the term dig it that everybody, like my guitar teacher, blues hall of famer as well, taught me. He used to say, "Yeah, dig it," or "dig it." He used to say, "dig it." What is the etymology of that term? It really means dig it. It means get into it, dig into it, try to understand it, try to, to really get into it. And so dig it, man. Dig that, guys. I watched that at the time with my girlfriend too. It was a good time in the 90s. Yeah. That was actually 2001. The production and the style and the music and all of that were from, it started in 1999 with American Pie, and then from around 1999 to about 2001, 2002, you had Dude Who Stole My Car, you had Legally Blonde. But if you looked at the way that they were filmed, and I guess I guess the only way I can explain it is the arrangement of it. It was they were all arranged the same, and so yeah, if I was a film producer, I would find that interesting, I suppose. But but they all had an energy to them that cannot be denied. They made me feel young again. you um, yeah, early 2000s. But that period of time, those films that came out during that time, they have that vibe to them. That's why we like them to this day. You know, and but just chew on that, guys. Consider it, dig it, think about it. I'm gonna go to Ferns tomorrow. My question is, where is a Freddie Prinze Jr. these days? Well, Freddie Prinze Jr. is doing the voice for Star Wars Rebels. Was the last time that I heard from him. He was doing the voice of the Jedi Kanan, and or yeah, he was doing the voice for Kanan in Star Wars Rebels. Um, Kind of put his foot in his mouth about some things there, but he's still doing his thing. But yeah, another actor from that period, Scooby Doo movies that he got famous from. So, just that, guys. Think about it, consider it. Um, Even Seymour Duncan can't save you. We're at the tipping point of guitar gear here. We're at a point in the cycle where it's tipping over and it's not tipping into the favor of things. So, consider that. Consider that. It's something that I ponder a great deal because a part of my income is dependent upon me being successful and trying to think about it. I don't want to think about it, and sometimes I'll be honest with you, I get sick of it. I won't do my guitar safaris. I used to do my guitar safaris a few weeks in advance. I would bookmark things, and if they sold, that's okay, but at least, I was prepped. Now, I don't want to do my guitar safari until it's time for me to do my guitar safari because I just, I'm not burnt out on it, but the thing is, I'm not as enthusiastic about it during this part of the cycle because it's rough, it's tough, and it requires a lot of homework, a lot of studying, a lot of angst as well, and it's a tough time. So think about that. That's from my experience. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Again, another movie that came out during that period of time. It was a golden age for Hollywood. We're feeling it in guitar retail as well. Yeah, yeah. You know, And but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I am going to try to pivot. I am the guy who takes lemons and tries to turn them into lemonade or something or something. So I will continue to pivot the best that I can. I have the support of you guys always to bounce ideas off of, and that is greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. And you guys are the best. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Maddie, again for another great live stream. Thank you for all of you guys for always tuning in, new or been here for a while, part of the OG crew. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this live stream tonight. I hope that you got something out of it. I hope I said something that struck a chord of truth in you. I want to be truthful, guys. I really do. I want to give it to you the way that I see it. And I am trying to see it as clearly and as truthfully cutting through things as possible because there's so much deception out there. So I hope you got something out of tonight's discussion. Thank you, guys. I will be here, God willing, again on Wednesday night. This week, I hope to release a regular video with Fern, having a conversation with Fern tomorrow. I certainly will put out some shorts because I'm getting rewarded. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm getting rewarded by YouTube for starting to put out shorts. It's undeniable. It's undeniable. I'm seeing an uptick in my subscriber count, my views, and all those things. And it's a game that I don't mind playing, but it's an added thing to my plate because it's not something that I want to do, that I want to put out just crappy. The girls can get away with it because all they had to do is put on a tight dress, showing their cleavage and lean into the camera and say, "Yeah, guys, guess what I'm doing today?" But it's not gonna work with me, guys. Don't nobody want to see a 58-year-old Mike's cleavage. Well, maybe some people, if you watch the right movie. But anyway, point is that it's just extra work on my plate. All right, guys. You guys take care. You never know, Mike. I know. Believe me. Actually, Run Ryan, I've had a few people that's come onto the chat and it's propositioned. So you're right. You do never know. Good night, guys.